for me, my career path starts with being a good sponge, and I think anyone who's listening should really take a moment and step back and say, look, what have you not learned yet? And learn as much as you can. Like, learn from the people who are above you, who are below you, who are at the side of you, because there's learnings in every facet of that combination. And I think if you're just so focused on getting to the top too quick, too early, you'll probably end up creating relationships that don't really last. And B, I think you're going to be unprepared.
Hey y'all, welcome to Selling with Social, the podcast that helps marketers increase marketing qualified leads, sales reps to shatter sales results, and sales leaders to grow as leaders. Each show, we interview sales, marketing, and social media practitioners, leaders, and influencers to help you connect, close more deals, build stronger relationships with clients, and improve your sales productivity. I'm Mario Martinez Jr. You're now listening to Selling with Social. Sati Hillyer, I am so excited that you've joined me here today with Selling with Social. Thank you so much, my friend, for joining me on today's program.
Thank you, Mario. Appreciate it. I'm glad to be here.
So we've got corporate executive, CEO of OneMob. We've got also a startup expert. I'm going to put you in that category. What else do you do, my friend? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I love being in this game. I love being in a startup. I love video, obviously. And we're just trying to make it really simple and easy and fun, just like what you've seen in the consumer world. We want to do the same for the enterprise. And when I'm not working, I love spending time with my wife and my kids. And I'm a vegan, just things like that. Just how to stay mind sharp.
I'm sorry you're a vegan. For those of you that are listening in, you'll probably throw some tomatoes at me or try to throw some tomatoes at me. Tati, that's an interesting one. What made you turn vegan? I want to hear about that story.
It was a year and a half ago. So a little OneMob now is 3 years old. So about halfway through the company. And I think I just started realizing that, starting a company from scratch takes a lot out of you. And, raising kids that are pretty young takes a lot out of you. So I needed to really kind of just change the way I was living and feeling. And I've always been fascinated in terms of like what I can do to kind of change like the way my body feels, and kind of got sucked into all those different documentaries about what's happening with the world of animals. And I'm a bit of an extremist. So I said, hey, I'm going to give this a shot. And I went all in, and literally after a week or two, you just start feeling the effects, and I'm more alert. I just don't ever feel like kind of sluggish anymore. So it's been a good thing.
So you mean to tell me that you don't crave a nice piece of barbecue?
Barbecue asparagus?
I love it, barbecue asparagus. Very nice. Well, that's interesting because I can tell you this much. I know the drill of the startup life, and I know the drain that it places on your body without a doubt. I don't know if I start to feel lethargic and sluggish, but I do feel like I'm gaining a lot of weight by sitting here in this chair, my friend. So I got to do something different. Well, listen, you've got an interesting background. You've been in sales most of your life, and you were actually at Salesforce prior to starting OneMob. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, it was a great run.
Tell us a little bit about your corporate career and your history.
Yeah. So, after I graduated in computer engineering, so I always knew I love technology and I wanted to kind of explore that side. And Salesforce was a great opportunity. I joined pretty early. It was right when Mark was talking about kind of bringing this platform, if you will, to his customers. So no longer do you just buy Salesforce as a CRM, but you could buy all these other components. And that ultimately became the App Exchange. And it was my job and a few others to basically make this idea that Mark had kind of touted a reality. And it was difficult, right? Because this was the first store. This was before the iPhone store. So we really had to think about what does that mean to kind of try and buy software online and connect it to your core CRM, which is quite critical. And I think that was my first parlay into the world of being an entrepreneur, because I was working with a lot of startups. I was working with, guys in a garage who had an idea and they knew about Salesforce and they wanted to kind of build something that plugged in all the way to these Fortune 500s who had already had a very successful product line. And now they were thinking about moving to the cloud, and they were trying to figure out how to do that well. And so my time at Salesforce, especially in those early days, it was just a lot of learning while doing. and trying to see what works and what actually, makes a good user experience for customers, and what makes, companies feel like this is not just a nice to have, but it's a must have. And then how do you really monetize and productize that? Because everyone has great ideas, but it's the ideas that really help solve a fundamental need or create a new category. That's what takes off. And so really getting exposure. I mean, we ended up taking it from this idea to about 2,000 apps. So quite a huge endeavor. And through that journey, I also got exposed to a lot of partners, kind of like you, right? People who say, okay, well, you bought in great tech, but how do you use it? How do you get the most out of it? And so I worked with big organizations like Accenture and Deloitte and PwC, as well as kind of smaller, more integrated partners where they would join and really kind of be part of the staff. And you start to learn, like, to me, technology is probably 20% of the game. 80% of the game is having the right folks in the room to really help you make sense of all this technology. And that got me into Australia. And so then I relocated with my wife when I was with Salesforce to Sydney and spent 2 years there looking after basically the whole partner ecosystem across APAC. And I mean, obviously that was just an amazing opportunity from like a personal standpoint, from a professional standpoint, got to experience so many different cultures. But it was around, that 8-year point where I was like, okay, now I've learned enough and I want to try this on my own. And
interesting. Well, you said something that was interesting to me. And, we've got sales, we've got marketers, we've got social media folks, we've got business owners who listen into Selling with Social podcast. And you said something that really is something I subscribe to and I truly believe in, is you develop that entrepreneurial mindset within the corporation. So this is interesting because a lot of folks who are listening in, they actually work for corporations today and they've got their defined job. Here's the box and they stay within that box.
Yeah.
But you started thinking about this as a business within a business. And arguably the app exchange now, I mean, we have companies who are literally living off of revenue that is generated as a result of them being connected to salesforce.com, right? And like their whole entire company is built off that.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit more about this entrepreneurial mindset. Not a lot of people in personal development and corporate development really start thinking about, like, what I'm doing today, what could it help me do tomorrow? When did that learning lesson, that mindset start hitting you to say, holy crap, I'm working on product development, I'm working on product marketing, I'm working on integration, helping companies with their business plans and developing service models, pricing models, and integration into a workflow. When did all of that hit you and say, I could actually start using this for my next phase of my career?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And I think even the term entrepreneur, you kind of think of that term externally, but when you're in an organization, I think the term they use is intrapreneur, right? Where you're kind of that same mindset, but now you're in an organization. And I think that's something that's just been kind of part of my journey since day one. Like, I've always liked to kind of create. And I think when I joined Salesforce, especially joining the App Exchange, which truly was kind of a startup within a large organization, which is great because it's very hard to create a startup when you're thinking about, oh my gosh, is this company going to be around? But if you are in the umbrella of a larger organization that has, to a certain extent, a pretty good amount of resources, you can take risk and you can try and really kind of fail and succeed. And that was nice to have. It was nice to know that we had that safety net. But that didn't mean that we were now this big established organization within the Salesforce, ecosystem. We were a newbie to the block and we really had to kind of build our brand. And so for me, I think since day one, when I was at Salesforce, I really was always thinking about that. Like, how is this going to work? How are we going to attract organizations to really build on this platform? And then how are we going to take them from womb to tomb, right? Because we need to give them a roadmap for success. And when we had to give them a roadmap, all of a sudden, I find that I'm now working with salespeople and working with the field and working with marketing and working with pricing and packaging and support. And you do start to get exposed to so many different points in an organization that, for me personally, I kind of started taking a step back and saying, hey, this is a really good learning lesson. And I mean, I think one piece of advice I would give to folks who are listening to this right now is, even if you are in a role where you are in this kind of quote unquote box, that doesn't mean you need to limit yourself to that box. I mean, you have the opportunity to kind of now start to slowly put your feelers out and expose yourself to other groups without obviously neglecting your core tasks. But all of a sudden, you start to see the world is a lot bigger than just your box. And one of the things that I think Salesforce really does for you, And it's great because Mark is a real big proponent of, kind of setting a vision and making sure that vision is kind of being set down the whole organization. He has this thing called V2 Mom. It's your visions, your values, your methods to achieve the vision, the obstacles that you foresee getting in your way, and the metrics to measure the success of your execution. So he sets his V2 Mom, his leaders set their V2 Mom, and it just goes all the way down to individuals like myself. When you do that, you start realizing that, there's no handouts. You need to find your journey. You need to find your path, create your path. And I think through that experience, being in a large organization, you start to realize that, okay, well, now I know I have this huge organization around me. So even if I fail, I can still rebound. But at the same time, I should start thinking about what's outside my box so that I can build my path, my career path, whether it's at Salesforce or eventually at another company, which is what I ultimately wanted to do.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the concept you just mentioned about building your career path. And generally, we think, all right, I'm a sales rep today. Tomorrow, I'm a sales manager. The next day, I'm a sales director. And that's usually the path that we think. And you actually came from the non-sales side, like the technical side of things, and then the product management side. And then you started moving into actually supporting sales, which we'll get into in just a minute in terms of, OneMob and what you guys do and how you help the sales organization. But let's talk a little bit about from a career pathing perspective, as you think about where you're at today. And for our listeners who are thinking, what's next for me? Or were you always thinking about what's next for me, or what should I do that's going to help me today that will get me here tomorrow? Did you kind of think through that process throughout your whole career?
Yeah. Well, what I do is I think there's two things that I think people should always think about. I feel like people have this tendency to sometimes think too much in the future, that they're not really
in the now
learning. They're not learning from the now, right?
Yeah.
Because the reality is there's so much that you can learn from your current role that if you're too kind of outside of your world and you're projecting, that you end up not really taking in what you should have learned. And then when you get to that future role, you're probably not going to be as equipped as you should be. So for me, when I came to Salesforce, I had already been at another company, another technology company, a lot smaller. So for me, Salesforce was my opportunity to now start to hone my skills and learn from, these kind of Fortune 500s that, you read about and you're thinking, wow, they have already obviously figured out something that a lot of other companies haven't. How do I learn from them? So for me, my career path starts with being a good sponge, and I think anyone who's listening should really take a moment and step back and say, look, what have you not learned yet? And learn as much as you can. Learn from the people who are above you, who are below you, who are at the side of you, because there's learnings in every facet of that combination. And I think if you're just so focused on getting to the top too quick, too early, you'll probably end up creating relationships that don't really last. And B, I think you're going to be unprepared. Having said that, as you're learning, you should be expanding. And, I think one of the best advices that I could give to anybody is always about finding a mentor, right? Because it's a lot harder to push yourself up than it is to get pulled up.
Yeah.
So I constantly think about, look, where do I want to grow? And, Salesforce was kind of interesting. It was a pretty transparent organization. It wasn't very hierarchical. I mean, yeah, there was management, but if I wanted to, get in touch with an executive who was in a different area, I could put the feelers out there. And I could use LinkedIn, for instance, as a way to kind of get to know them, even though we're in the same organization, and then use that as a way to kind of now connect. And then from there, that exposed me to this other area of the business, and it gave me a chance to still hone my skills, but to start talking about, what does a future career path look like? Because the thing is no one knows where your future is going to go. And I think it's really important for you to just have as many conversations as you can with people who are, folks that you can really respect. And through those conversations, that's when they start to see you and they say, hey, you know what, Mario, I think you'd be great for this role. And all of a sudden doors start opening. But I think if you don't spend the time to really hone your skills and really absorb as much as you can in your current role, then I feel like you lose a lot of potential opportunity.
Yeah, it reminds me of a actually interesting discussion I just had with Vengreso CMO, Bernie Borges. We were working on a really large contract with a very large Fortune 100. And this contract came at us with some really, really stringent terms and conditions.
Mhm.
And so they looped me in to help them out on going through the terms and conditions. And it was interesting because as we started going through these terms and conditions, I started engaging with their procurement and their purchasing and risk development team and legal team. And we started having conversations. And as we started having these conversations, both on email as well as in verbal, it became very clear, like, wait a minute, I really understood all these elements. And so, in fact, I pointed out there was a clause in the contract by our legal guidance that identified a clause in the contract that they were eliminating in one section, but there was a catch-all phrase in another section, right? So I got a note from Bernie and he says, were you a former lawyer in your past life? And I'm like, no, why do you ask that question? And I thought for sure, I was like, maybe I messed up on something. He's like, how do you know all this stuff, right? Now, what was interesting is I go back to the concept of when I was a rep. First off, I wanted to be in total control of everything that I was doing. And I used to work in the global accounts. So in the global accounts, we were negotiating multi-million-dollar contracts. And I was intimately involved in the development of contract language that met both our requirements and the customer's requirements. And in most cases, most sales reps usually were punting, right? They punt and the global account manager would get over to hand it over to legal. They would bring in the business finance team in order to be able to engage them directly with the client. And it would be like the punt and kick and hopefully land on where it was at. But for me, I was like, I want to understand this segment and what we're negotiating because I want to make sure we're always negotiating win-win agreements. I want to be able to help write the language. I want to be able to help negotiate that language. I want to be able to have input so that one day I may want to lead that business pricing and finance team, that legal organization, or sales operations, or wherever that may fall. And that was important to me. And so when we were doing this contract and Bernie says, hey, was this a past life? And I'm like, no. He's like, how do you know that information? And it was because of those opportunities like that, where you looked at it and said, look, I could do one of two things. I could punt and give this to legal and let legal talk to legal. And there are some things that certainly that was beyond my realm of expertise, right? Or give it to the business finance team that would help negotiate the contracts. Or I could understand it well enough that when I get on the phone and I need to talk business issue to business issue with the business leader, right? Yep. Neither of us are lawyers, but I can say this doesn't make sense because, and translate it into a business language. That's where I knew I could help add value in the business relationship. And I think that's important that people think through that. If you're in sales, if you're in marketing, if you're in social media, business owner, whatever it might be, that honing in your skills, like you said, and understanding the now and what it might be able to do for you in the future is critical to our personal succession planning that we may put on for ourselves. Thoughts?
Absolutely. I mean, a couple of things that you said that I think really are important. I mean, one is it is a change in mindset, right? Because I think a lot of people, especially if you're early in career, you get your job, you're really excited and you think, great, let me do my 9 to 5, I'm out and I'm doing what I need to do. But the reality is the people who do something that really makes an impact, whether it's starting your own company or transforming, your sales approach or, crushing your number or, really creating a new part of the business. It's those folks who are thinking above and beyond, right? And it's common sense, right? Common sense is not always so common, but the reality is look, it's the folks who work hard and then turn that hard work into smarter work, right? Where they're not just busting their butt, but they're learning on what they're doing. And they think about, okay, well, I know my job is 9 to 5 and I'm supposed to be doing A, B, C, and D. But the reality is I want to make this sales deal, close. And I want to be able to communicate the language in a more easy to digestible way. So I'm going to spend time working with the lawyers, for instance. Like things like that aren't normally what sales reps will do, but it's those small things, and they're all small, but when you add them up, it becomes quite big. And all of a sudden you have this huge competitive advantage with respect to how you are being perceived in your organization. Yeah. And I think that's what helps, again, drive other leaders in the organization to pull you up because they think, hey, if this person can spend the time to work outside the box, get their job done, but grow and evolve, and at the same time, they're building good relationships, they're helping to inspire others. I mean, that's someone that you just want to give more and more responsibility to because you know that what they touch is going to turn to gold. So I totally agree with it. And I think it's about finding that balance of, not dropping the ball on what you need to do, but at the same time, doing more than is being asked of you.
Yeah. I want to switch gears here for a moment. And you said something about doing something that makes an impact. And those are the ones that will get noticed and or you use the words pulled up, right? And I cannot disagree with you. And this is something interesting that I've really admired and look at you as the founder and CEO of OneMob, that you are leading, you and your co-founder Nimesh are leading the way in terms of doing something different for salespeople. Now, for all of our listeners, that we know that these aren't commercials, but I love what you have done in terms of what I call video marketing for sales, right? And hopefully it's okay to categorize what you guys are doing there for video marketing for sales. But we all know in the industry, I mean, this is like top 5 documented marketing tactics that are being used includes video, right? Mm-hmm. Facebook, video. YouTube Live, video. LinkedIn just rolled out with video. Twitter has Periscope, video, right? Snapchat, right? Video. So all these things are leading to video, and marketers know that. Now here comes the salesperson, and salespeople are doing prospecting every single day the way they've always done prospecting, or sales leaders are asking their salespeople to do prospecting the same way, maybe tweaking this, tweak that, tweak this, or say this or say that, or put this funny email out, or this weird headline for a subject line on email. But you came up with this idea, you and your team came up with this idea to launch OneMob, which is totally doing something that makes an impact, which is what you said earlier, and it's totally different and it's getting noticed. Talk a little bit about this concept of what is OneMob doing? What are you doing that is helping to make an impact in sales?
Yeah. And it's interesting, the companies that you just listed off, right? Twitter and YouTube and Facebook and even LinkedIn now with video rolling out. When you think about those companies, typically you think consumer companies, right? Hey, I'm going to go and use these tools to connect with my friends or kind of follow people outside my organization. But you don't really think of it too much as like, oh, I'm going to use this with my customers. And that's what we saw. We thought, look, this is a market that's just really, really starting to explode. And now you got Snapchat and Instagram, and they're kind of going back and forth on all these cool features when it comes to video. And we're just thinking, what about the enterprise? Why isn't business doing this as well? And I think there's a lot of things that, I think there's this line of thinking where, that's just too progressive. Our customers aren't going to want to see it. And I think what's great is marketing has really proven it, right? You throw a video in an email, all of a sudden you get better open rates. You use the word video, you throw it on a web page. And for us, there's been great studies done by Forbes where they say 59% of buyers would rather watch a video than read text, or Forrester that says 75% of your employees would rather watch video than read your email. So I think the first thing that we wanted to do was make sure people realize that actually this is what the world wants to see. You have to kind of remove your stigma or your conservative nature and realize the fact that the consumer world is going to continue to influence the enterprise. And again, Salesforce was a huge advocate for me with this because that was how Salesforce operated. Mark would always say, why can't buying enterprise software be as easy as buying a book on Amazon? And for me, it's like, why can't I communicate with you as a prospect or a customer just as easy as I communicate with my wife or my kids with video? Yeah. So that was kind of the thinking. That was the kind of the catalyst that we built off of. And then really now what we've been trying to do is now make it part of your workflow, because, prospecting isn't easy and you're always trying to figure out how to get someone's attention. And we know video is really effective, but if it's not easy and if it's not seamless, then there becomes this rub. So we've been spending the last 3 years to really kind of smoothen out that rub. And I think, folks who've been using OneMob are getting some amazing results. We're going to continue to put more fuel to this fire because, rising tide lifts all ships. The more video we see in the world, the more pervasive it's going to be across not just consumers, but professionals. And we want to be there so that we can help professionals.
And I love what you guys are doing in terms of bringing something to market that really makes an impact. And, we've seen it in our own individual sales efforts and in teams that we actually train for digital sales video, our programs utilizing actually OneMob. We've seen the impact and we've seen people be able to find new opportunities, new leads, create new conversations. In fact, one of our NFL sports teams that we share as a joint customer, we've got a new video, which I haven't sent to you yet, but that new video actually is showcasing that we had someone who went cold for 2.5 months. And wow. They decided to send a video message using OneMob. And that person responded back with booking a meeting with them and the CEO, right? Because it was something that was totally different, totally unique. And this is in sports sales, right? I mean, this is where people are looking to sell, $50,000 suite licenses as an example for somebody to pay for a big ticket item, which does usually require C-level executives. So it is absolutely making an impact. And I want to talk though a little bit about this concept of being a founder and a CEO of a startup. What is startup life like? Because a lot of folks, there's a lot of salespeople, a lot of marketers, a lot of business owners that are listening in. They've been at this maybe for a while. They have these great ideas.
Yeah.
how do you take idea to actually pen to paper?
Yeah, this is a great question. And I think there's just so much I could talk about on this. So first thing is, I think you really need to surround yourself with a really good team. So you should put this in the comments. My favorite book is Good to Great by Jim Collins. Okay. And there's this fantastic chapter called First Who, Then What? Meaning before you have your big vision or before you even execute on your big vision, make sure you have the right people in the bus and make sure those people are the type of people who you may need to change seats, right? They may do this one day and then they may do something else, but it's first who, then what? And that was probably one of the most important things for me is, finding a really great co-founder like Nimesh, where we could really kind of, challenge each other, collaborate with each other, and really kind of help each other kind of get the best out of both of us so that we could create, I think, an output that's, obviously had a good impact is one. And then surrounding yourself with the team, right? Making sure that everyone that we hire, not just technically fits the role, but culturally. I think Zappos is like one of the experts when it comes to stuff like this. They had that book, Delivering Happiness, where he talks about even if we had the best person and he ticked all the boxes, but culturally didn't get along, we wouldn't hire that person. And I think as a startup, that is probably even more paramount because if someone's leaving often, or if that person has a poisonous or toxic attitude, it's not a huge office here, right? You really sense that. So you need to make sure you have the right people. And then once you're in the role of being a startup founder or just in a small startup, I think you just have to realize that this is not a job where you need to do everything. This is a job where you need to find the right people and each person kind of takes ownership and you really let them, fail or you let them succeed, right? If you try to micromanage, I don't think the company is going to take off. I think it's going to be because no one person can do everything, right? You need to let certain people take their part of the ship and run with it. And one of the things that I think for me, what I started to realize is I don't have that much time, especially also raising kids. So I really started getting better at saying no to certain things and really focusing on stuff, right? Really getting more specific on specific accounts or specific initiatives and trying to go deep versus, mile wide and inch deep, right? And so that's one of the things that I think has helped us because, everyone's got ideas. And even when we would pitch and we would raise money or we would sell or we would talk, like everyone's like, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. And granted, a lot of these ideas are great, but when you're a startup, you only have so much time, you only have so many resources. So you really have to kind of find maybe 3 to 5 bets and go hard. And if you do fail fast, right? Fail fast, learn from your mistakes and move on. It's not about dwelling in the past. It's about iterating. And I think one of the things that we've been doing well is we don't have siloed conversations. Like we don't think like our OneMob think tank isn't just OneMob. Our OneMob think tank is, friends like you and customers and investors and advisors and other folks that we've kind of brought into the fold. So now when we think about the next wave of where we want to take the company, we don't just throw it out there and hope it sticks. We've already vetted it by so many folks that we already have a good idea. Like it's like American Idol. Yeah. Like American Idol is good because by the time you get to the finalist, you've pretty much gotten your fan base. Yeah. So even if you don't win and you create some album, you're pretty much going to get some people to buy your songs, right?
Absolutely.
I feel like that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to find our fan base so that when we go live with anything, we have good support.
Yeah. I love that analogy you just gave of American Idol. And it's totally true, actually. And you just said something that it was interesting to me because mechanically, we're doing something very similar, right? We're building the fan base, we're bringing people into the fold, and we're engaging with different folks. But I actually didn't think about the fact that regardless of whether or not we, win the actual first place grand prize, we've still got to build up the fan base. And that's still going to help drive sales revenue. And that's an interesting, I didn't really, boy, I'm learning something here right on this. Thank you, Sati.
That was free.
Yeah. That was free advice, right? I love that one. By the way, I never asked you, how many, you have 2 kids, right?
Yeah, I have 2 little kids.
And what are the ages?
So I have a boy who's turning 4 at the end of this month. And then I have a little girl who's turning 1 October 1st. So yeah, they're fun. And they love to play. And my son sometimes plays a little bit harder than I think she can take. So she's going to be a strong girl.
I love it. Congratulations. So
Thank you.
one of the things I want to come back to, though, is really this concept of some of this changing shift that's happening in the marketplace for salespeople. And you and I have spent a lot of time talking about, what salespeople are doing today and how salespeople can be different. And I want to come back to the commentary. We talked about this earlier, doing something that really works, that makes an impact. Now, today, a lot of salespeople have prospected the way they've prospected because that's what they've learned, know, like, and trust, right? But the thing that you guys are bringing to the marketplace from a product perspective is the ability to be able to stand out inside of someone's mailbox, whether that be on LinkedIn, whether that be through a message, whether that be through a social post, or even through text messaging, as well as through email. What is this shift that a salesperson has to go through in order to understand that, wait a minute, the way buyers have engaged with me is changing? What's happening in the marketplace right now that drives this use of video within sales outreach?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different, I think, stats and stories around this. I think one that I thought was really interesting was from CEB when they did the whole kind of challenger sale. And they talked about, I don't know the exact number, but I want to say it's more than like 50% of like the purchase is based on the sales experience, right? And so now you think about it, I'm looking for a vendor, and yeah, let's say I was going to buy CRM. So you got your Salesforce and your Microsoft Dynamics and your SAP and your Oracle. So you got some pretty big players that all do a lot of, similar stuff, maybe some unique stuff. But now as that shopper, I'm thinking, okay, well, who am I going to buy? Well, CEB saying, well, more than 50% of that purchase is going to be because of your sales experience, of how that vendor courted you. And so that was something that really resonated to us early on as well, which is, okay, well, if you're trying to be the trusted advisor, which everyone wants to be, and you want to really kind of help them understand that, look, if you buy our product, you're not going to get fired. If anything, you're going to become a hero.
Right.
Well, I need to establish a lot of trust with you. And our thing is, look, we know phone and email aren't going away, but think about when people first sold. It was all face-to-face, right? You would spend so much time to get time on that person's calendar, and then you're face-to-face. And when you're face-to-face, it's hard to, kind of be rude, right? You're going to give that person a chance, and you're going to let them kind of speak out in terms of what they're going to add in terms of value. Well, all of a sudden, fast forward today, face-to-face has become kind of last in the relationship. It's like step 10, not step 1. And so all of a sudden it's like, I'm emailing, I'm doing all these things. I'm leaving voicemails, like I'm using systems to automate all this stuff. And to be honest, I feel as a buyer, you're just thinking, man, this is annoying, right?
Yeah.
It's bothering me. I don't have time for you. You're calling me in odd times. You're interrupting. You're doing all these like tricks to kind of make me think that it's someone maybe from my family, right? And all of a sudden it's kind of irritating the buyer. Yeah. And so what we started thinking about is like, how can we kind of learn from this? Like, we know face-to-face is great. It makes people maybe a little at ease, but how do I deliver a video to you in a way that is not going to be so cumbersome? So, live meetings are great, but the reality is it's a scheduling nightmare. So we said, well, what if we could just make it so you could record a quick video of yourself so you could show that you're a human? Maybe you take a little bit more time to record the video, but that little work up front is going to pay dividends, because now all of a sudden that person can see who you are. They can hear your pitch, and then maybe they're going to forward it on, right? And videos are shareable. And it's great to be able to know that when your message is being forwarded, you can track it, and you can know that the other people who are watching are also getting to know a little bit about you. And we just find that as a result, it starts to bring that last step, which is face-to-face, way earlier on. So that when you do finally meet them, they're like, hey, I already feel like I know you. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've walked into meetings and people are like, hey man, I already know you. And I'm like, oh really, did we meet? It's like, no, I saw your video. And that just breaks so much ice, creates instant rapport. And all of a sudden, now it's like, okay, let's talk about I'm going to be your advisor. And I'm going to make sure that when you buy my product, you're not just buying something and I'm going to just see you later. Like, this is a marriage, if you will, that we're getting into, and you can count on me to deliver.
Yeah. Interesting. That having been said, I was actually traveling to Cincinnati for a sales training program that I was delivering. And it was about 11:45 at night, almost midnight. And I walk in, straight from the airport into the hotel, walk up to the front desk, and there's two people in front of me. They're finishing up checking in, and they both turn around. They're like, oh, Mario. And I was like, hi. And they're like, Mario Martinez, right? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, we know you. And I'm like, okay, what's your name? And so the funny part is they had been watching my videos right, as part of our sales training program. And they knew exactly who I was before I even knew who they were, right?
Yeah.
So it was like that instantly. I was like, oh, it's nice to meet you. What's your name? And so you got a chance to be able to meet them. And I think you're right. There's an actual science behind the use of video technology and the ability to be able to connect with somebody. And I think they say that the brain is hardwired to trust a person's face, which is why sales leaders push our salespeople to get out in front of customers so much, right? Yeah. Because nothing beats a handshake and nothing beats the face-to-face interaction, right?
Absolutely.
You cannot beat that. But to your point, we've become a much more virtualized buying and selling environment.
Yeah.
And you said something way earlier in the podcast about how what Mark used to say from Salesforce about how wouldn't it be nice for someone to be able to just buy a piece of software like the way they can go buy a book off of Amazon, right? It's like And interestingly, I was in the telecom space for that many people know my background. And it was when wireless really has transformed this professional and consumer buying habit because we called it prosumers. The professional consumer. You were consuming this technology, this wireless handset, right? And when you bought it for the enterprise, you bought it with wanting to deal and use this as a consumer, right? Like I can't get my pictures. I can't get my text. Or I need to be able to get my email to this, right? And like all those things. And the same goes for today as we engage with our professional, the buyers. We're engaging with them the way that they're engaging with their friends and family, as you said, through Facebook, through Twitter, right? Through Snapchat, through Instagram, whatever. We're engaging with them the same way. Yeah. And we've got to be able to take that and bring that into the current modern selling practices. And I think that's that we've had some really interesting success with the use of video. But tell me the difference for those that are listening, especially the marketers. Video marketing for marketers versus video marketing for sales. Help us understand, like, what is the difference in terms of the tech or the way we use it or who's using it? Can you help me understand?
Yeah, I mean, for us specifically, we're more kind of geared to like the rep, right? The person who is selling to the prospect or the account manager or customer success manager who's working the customer. Our goal is to
the video marketing for sales.
For sales, right? Because that's the person who, and this, I remember a customer said this, which I thought was amazing. He said, I'm a CEO of my cubicle. Or like I live in my cubicle, or I live in my office, and I have my book of business, and I need to grow my accounts or grow my revenue. Well, how am I going to get in front of those folks, make sure that they know that I'm here for them? And, a lot of big companies have, I think a lot of companies in general have travel restrictions, right? That's why they're all doing virtual. But again, trying to get a meeting on a calendar, that takes time. But just recording a quick video and saying, hey, I just want to put a face to name. I want to introduce myself. I want to invite you to this event. I want to thank you for being a customer. I value your feedback. All of that can be done very easily with video. And like you said, all these folks in their consumer life, they're already receiving this stuff. If anything, they've never received anything like this in the office. So they're thinking, oh my gosh, what is it? And once they start to see it, they realize this is a better way to engage. This is a better way to keep the conversation going. And by no means is this a replacement of phone or email. This is just another tool in your belt, because the reality is video is around us. And if you're not using it, you are missing a huge opportunity to improve the way that you connect.
Yeah, I want to prove this out. So bear with me with these questions. Whether it's Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, what are the two things, Sati, that you stop at on those social channels?
Oh, photos and videos.
Photos and videos. Boom, right there. You just heard it from Sati himself. Photos and videos. We stop at the photos because they're cute. We stop at the videos because it's movement, and movement is what attracts the eye. Yep. And if we think about that, and anybody who's listening from a sales best practice perspective, if you think about that and you think about, wait a minute, people are stopping on this content and they're consuming content. I think the stat I saw was that YouTube has grown 100% year over year and is the only social channel that has been able to do that year over year, right? 100% year over year because of the consumption of video. I think the other stat I saw was predicted by the end of 2017, 69% of all internet related traffic will be as a result of consumption of video.
I believe that.
Crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. So if we as salespeople know this, I guess why aren't salespeople leveraging modern technologies to connect with their modern buyer? Any ideas?
I think it's a couple. I think, again, we are habits of our old ways. I think we're just, that's kind of the nature of the beast. And I think you join these companies and they say, okay, great. Here's your laptop, here's your login to your CRM, and here's your email, and maybe here's your phone dialer. Have at it. Here's your list. Go get busy. And just because it worked then doesn't mean it works now. And we have to be aware and open to the fact that the world is evolving. And I think one of the things that we're trying to do is we're trying to come in and not disrupt everything, right? We don't want to come in and say, hey, throw all that away, start using video. If anything, we want to say, look, guys, sometimes your calls, not sometimes, most of the times your calls don't get answered. So you're going to leave a voicemail, but they're not going to get returned. Or you're sending these text-based emails, but no one's responding. Like, why don't you try using a video? And we try to do it in a way where it's fast, it's easy, the app is very consumer-like. And then at the end of the day, there's a saying in sales, right? I remember at Salesforce, we would say, like, if it's not in Salesforce, it didn't happen.
Right.
Meaning, like, if you didn't track your activity, like, you didn't do the work. And so one of the most important things, at least in our platform, is that we integrate to your CRM. And right away, as you start using it, it's going to write that activity to Salesforce. So I'm a rep, I record that video, I start sending it. Well, now I can move on to my next thing, and we'll just let the data come in and tell you need to respond, or, hey, you know what, move to your next account. So I think it's a combination of people just never thought to use it because, again, it's still pretty new, because everything you see with respect to video still primarily is consumer. And so we know we are definitely kind of challenging status quo. And then secondly, making sure people realize, like, this isn't going to require, a video studio room with marketing and a videographer and special people to help make this a professional looking video. Like, we want to shoot authentic video. We want this to be real so that people know that you are human, and we want them to just see you in a new light so that you can stand out.
Yeah. I like to talk about this as raw and unfiltered, right? Raw and unfiltered, and one and done. Right? So the raw and unfiltered piece is, think about this. And all of you are listening in. When you're on a call with a client, whatever it is that you're talking through on just a pure analog call, whatever comes out is what has come out. You can't take back, right? That is pure in its purest sense for a salesperson. That is raw and unfiltered right there. You cannot take back what exits your mouth, right? Yep. And the one and done is the same exact methodology and mindset. Whatever you say, whatever pitch you give, whatever presentation you're providing, whatever question you're answering, the moment you say it, it's done, right? Yep. Now, you can correct yourself, maybe oftentimes say, oh, actually, I'm sorry. Let me take a step back here. Let me correct what I'm saying. But for the most part, it's one and done, like what you say. So with video, I think people get so wrapped around this concept of, like, oh my gosh, I need to have the right green screen. Well, my hands are going to shake, right? I'm afraid to be on camera. Well, my question is, are you afraid to actually meet a customer live and in person? No? Oh, okay. Then why are you afraid to be on camera? The camera lens, I think I was in a training. I said, your camera hole, your camera lens is your prospect, right? Yeah. So before we go here, I want to just maybe come up with five, maybe if we can come up 5 best practices that we can give to sales, business owners, marketers on best practices for the use of video marketing for sales, not video marketing for marketing, right? Yeah. Video marketing for marketing is the one-to-many, whereas video marketing for sales is, as you said, the salesperson, inside field salesperson, SDR, is utilizing sales technologies to create outreach and build on current relationships. So not just prospecting, but build on current relationships. So I was thinking maybe, Sati, you and I could come up with a few best practices, and maybe I can start out with one and you can come up with a couple more. Yeah. But best practices that I've used, we talked about the one and done. I mentioned that already, but discuss the most important information first in your video. So if you have 3 bullet points, you want somebody to do something, let them know up front in that video what it is that you want them to do, because there's a high probability if it's too long, it'll actually not be watched. Yeah. Right? So discuss the most important information first in your video. Go ahead. Give me another best practice.
Yeah. And I think it kind of goes to what you just said, which I think is something that people forget, is have that call to action, right? When you send a video, you either have an awareness video or a video with some sort of call to action. And most of the time you want something. I want a meeting. I want you to click on this link. I want you to register. I want you to get back to me. So ask for that. Say, hey, customer, this is so-and-so. I just wanted to follow up and I really need you to X. Because I find sometimes people will create videos or any type of voicemail and they don't ask for anything and they don't get anything. So it's like they say, if you don't ask for it, the universe won't give it to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one that I think would be good for folks that are trying to leverage video within their sales prospecting and client retention techniques is people always ask me, does length matter? And the answer to that question, yes, it does. Keep your videos to 2 minutes or less. We're talking about video, guys. Come on, Sati.
You started laughing. I didn't.
that was all you. But the length of your video actually has a direct correlation to how much is actually watched. And above 2 minutes, I think you're going to get I think the stat I have is about a 40% drop off if 2 minutes or greater. So if you want to keep your audience engaged, you want to do that as 2 minutes or less. And of course, 1 minute is the most optimal length of a video.
Just to add to that. So I'm a huge fan of less is more. So I do think when people talk, get to the point. And I think what's really good with video is it starts to help you get better at being concise and getting straight to the point. Because a lot of times people will just kind of yada, yada, yada about random things. So I do recommend less is more. And, typically we see 30 seconds to a minute being like ideal, especially if it's just like, hey, I just want to introduce myself, show some stuff, and then get to the call to action. I will say though, what's kind of interesting is if you start to change what you're showing, then you can start having longer videos. So for instance, with OneMob, you can not only record yourself, but you can flip the camera. So we've seen examples where some of our sports teams will record a video of ourselves and then they'll flip the camera and start showing like, hey, here's where you're going to sit tonight. Or they'll record their screen and walk through some slides. And I talked to a videographer and he actually told me that the videos on YouTube that get the most watch time are videos that are somewhere between 8 and 15 minutes, which to me was a huge surprise. But that's because those videos, if you watch them, they have a lot of cutting, a lot of editing where like all of a sudden you'll see the guy and then they'll cut to something else and cut to that. And I think it's going back to your point about movement. So if we're just watching some person talk, then after a while you want to keep it short. But if you're now cutting to a scene and then changing this and then showing that, then you can start having longer videos. But if you're just trying to introduce yourself or just kind of get a response, keep it short.
So you're saying don't just be a bobblehead.
Don't just be a bobblehead. Yeah.
I like that. Last one that I've got, I think, for the show here is I always encourage our reps to include a question inside of the video. And the reason for that is to create engagement. You want somebody to do something. You want them to reply back to you, right? So make sure that you've got your call to action and a question that requires them to actually have to respond.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that? Agree?
Definitely agree. Because again, if you don't ask them anything, then they're probably going to watch it, or maybe they won't even forward it on because they'll think, oh, thanks for giving me an update.
Yeah.
So I think you definitely need to have that question or some sort of call to action. And, again, what's nice about video is you can redo it, right? To your point, when you say something live, you can't take it back. But with a video, you can get it right. You can practice, you can use scripts, you can have a teleprompter, you can do all this stuff to make sure it's not necessarily need to be perfect, but you can get it right. And, with OneMob, we stream everything. So if I, for instance, send something to you I shouldn't have, I can turn it off.
Yeah.
And you can't retract an email and you can't take back a voicemail. So this actually allows you to, this is something that where if you are kind of making sure that, hey, you want to say the right things and you want to be cautious that if you did say something wrong, you can pull it back. Video allows you to do that. So
fantastic. Sati, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I got a couple questions for you. Number one, if someone wants to reach out to you, should that be through Twitter or LinkedIn, email?
Absolutely.
How can I get a hold of you?
Twitter for sure. My handle is really easy. It's just my first name, SATI. LinkedIn as well. Please connect with me. I always love kind of meeting new people. Learn. If you're also more than welcome to visit OneMob.com to learn about the product and sign up. You can literally pull out your iPhone or your Android and start using it today.
Fantastic. And I always ask this question of all my guests on Selling with Social, and that is your all-time favorite movie. What is it?
Oh, man.
I threw you for a loop. This one wasn't prepared.
I know, because I have favorite movies based on genres.
Okay. We'll pick one. Any of them.
Oh, man. You know what? I'm just going to say this one because I just watched it. It's one of my favorite comedies, Trading Places.
Trading Places. Okay.
With Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd. It's hilarious. It's basically about someone who's on the streets and someone who is like super wealthy, and they switch them and see what happens to their life. It's hilarious.
I'll have to watch that one. I have not seen it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Do you recommend it?
Of course I recommend it. It's a little bit more unique, but I wanted to give you something instead of just the standard, I don't know, Star Wars, as people would probably say.
No, I actually haven't had that one on the show yet.
Look at that. See?
We've got almost every episode has a unique movie inside of it. It's interesting.
What did I say? I'm all about making an impact.
That's right. All about making an impact. Well, Sati, it's been fantastic having you on Selling with Social. We've covered some really great, fantastic ground, from your own development as an entrepreneurial mindset within the corporation to talking about how to leverage video for sales and changing that within the sales tactics. What a great conversation. I really want to thank you for joining me on Selling with Social, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Take care, buddy.
Bye, Mario.
Thanks so much for joining me on that episode of Selling with Social. I hope you found as much value in that episode as I did. Here's what I want you to do next. Please go to www.vengreso.com. That's VENGRESO.com. VENGRESO.com. And make sure that you get access to our content. We've got the latest and greatest in digital sales, sales training, content marketing, and social selling strategies that are going to help you grow your sales pipeline. I look forward to having you on the next show of Selling with Social. Make sure you also go to vengreso.com/podcast to be able to get access to the latest and greatest Selling with Social episodes, along with any of the other episodes that we've got from Social Business Engines with my friend and partner, Bernie Borges, along with Conversations with Phil with my friend and partner, Phil Gerbishak. Thanks again for joining on Selling with Social.